I don't know. Oh, there we go.
Eric, can you turn around and got it on the screen? Oh, yeah.
It's not touching.
So good.
That got it.
Shabbat shalom, everybody. So here we are. We're
Looks like that screen,
starting,
doesn't
we're
it?
starting a new book of
Should be
the
able to do it.
Bible, the Book of Kings. Except that it's gonna be a continuation of the David story for, for right now. I mean, I'll give away, it's gonna be David's death story.
Oh,
But as we move along in the Book of Kings, you'll see that it's different than the Book of Samuel. Well, not for a while though. First, we'll have the story, end of David's life. We'll have the story of Solomon. We'll have the story of the civil war after Solomon. We'll have stories of Elijah and Elisha, or Eliyahu and Elisha, the prophets, and their fights with the kings. But then we'll get into some of the kings that don't last so long and it gets very formulaic, but there's big gems there too. Traditionally, the books of Kings were written by the prophet Jeremiah. The prophet Jeremiah was the prophet at the when the temple was destroyed and people were sent into exile. He actually ended up in Egypt, not in Babylonia. But a lot of scholars think it was written or compiled, soon after the exile of Babylonia, but it doesn't have the same theology of return that that the Book of Chronicles has, which the Book of Chronicles at the end of the Bible is parallel of a lot of Book of Samuel and the Book of Kings, just with a different twist. It doesn't. The Book of Chronicles downplays the badness of the kings, especially David. But as we know, the Book of Samuel that we finished is warts and all with David, right? And the Book of Kings is definitely warts and all for all the kings. Okay. And yeah, so you ready? Shall we do it? Okay.
It's not related to the supermarket, is it?
Probably not. So in Hebrew, of course, it's called Malachim, which means kings. Christian split. Well, no, I think the Septuagint was the Greek translation. The Bible splits the book into two in a kind of awkward place. So like Jews never had ancient Jews didn't have the book as two books until the Middle Ages with printing, or after the Middle Ages with printing. That's what I read. But now we have Malachim Aleph, book one, Malachim Bet, book two, yeah. Shall we? Someone begin. Chapter 1, Book of Kings. I don't know what page it's on in the
705.
705, okay.
King David was now old, advanced in years, and though they covered him with bedclothes, he never felt warm. His courtiers said to him, "Let a young virgin be sought for my lord the king to wait upon your majesty and be his attendant, and let her lie in your bosom, and my lord the king will be warm."
Okay. What's this picture of David? Before we get to the woman they're bringing for him, but what's a picture we have of him? He's an old man. Yeah. For so long, he was strong. He was vital. He was right. And here we have these can't even keep warm, right? Okay.
So they looked for a beautiful girl throughout the territory of Israel. They found Abishag, the Shunammite, and brought her to the king. The girl was exceedingly beautiful. She became the king's attendant and waited upon him, but the king was not intimate with her.
Right. So now what do we have?
He couldn't even.
Yeah.
Perform.
Right. Right. And so the symbol, remember his son Absalom, what does he do to show his power? Remember when he enters into Jerusalem with the rooftop, sleep with the concubines, right? Yeah.
Now Adonijah, son of Haggith, went about boasting, "I will be king." He provided himself with chariots and horses and an escort of 50 outrunners.
So don't write it in Hebrew. Adoniah, son of Haggith. Haggith is a wife of David that we don't really know much about, but he's the oldest son, right? Still around. Okay, he's the oldest son. So what does he think? My dad's dying. It's my turn.
It's my
Right.
turn.
Yeah.
His father had never scolded him. Why did you do that? He was the one born after Absalom, and like him, was very handsome. He conferred with Joab, son of Zeruiah, and with the priest Abithar, and they supported Adonijah. But the priest Zadok, Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, the prophet of Nathan, Shimei, and Ray, and David's own fighting men, did not side with Adonijah.
So we have a
split.
split at court, right? So Yoav, now, well, let's remember, who's Yoav? He's David's cousin, but he's David's general, who always does David's bidding without David saying it.
Right.
But Yoav, well, okay, so he's supporting,
Who supports his
Ruth.
son?
But all these other new, and who's Eviatar? Eviatar was that priest that supported David when David was on the run from Saul, right? These are David's old companions.
Right.
Who are all these new guys that don't support Adoniah? Well, Nathan's been around for a long time, Nathan the prophet, right?
Well, they're making a play for it.
Yeah. Okay.
Adoniah made a sacrificial feast of sheep, oxen, and fatlings, and the Zoheleth stone, which is near En Rogel. He invited all his brother princes and all the king's courtiers of the tribe of Judah, but he did not invite the prophet Nathan or Benaiah or the fighting men or his brother Solomon. Then Nathan said to Bathsheba, Solomon's mother, "You must have heard that Adoniah, son of Haggith, had assumed the kingship without the knowledge of our Lord David. Now take my advice so that you may save your life and the life of your son Solomon."
Is he telling the whole truth here? What's that? David knows, I mean, maybe David doesn't knows that Adoniah says that he's king, but David knows that there's people who support him that want him to be king, right? Okay. Why didn't Adoniah invite his brother Solomon? Shlomo.
Well, it's usually not good for two brothers when the older one assumes power.
Yeah,
So you avoid.
but he invited all the rest of his brothers. He obviously saw Shlomo as a threat to power, right?
Right.
Yeah. Maybe David was closer with
With Bathsheba.
Bathsheba than his mom. Maybe David was closer with Shlomo than with him, right? So it's yeah, he didn't invite him, but Nathan seems to be now doing some behind the scenes work.
A lot of sibling rivalry.
For sure.
Yeah.
So what, right? So we've talked about what kind of stability does the monarchy bring?
Centralized government.
Centralized government, defense, right? Because it's a centralized army, right?
Taxes.
Right, which brings infrastructure, things like that. But what kind of instability happens with monarchies?
Family.
Family. It screws up your family.
Well, who was the one that had the big party and didn't invite his brother, or did invite his brother and got murdered?
Right, so that's Amnon, right? Yeah. Yeah, who was the presumed king, he was the oldest, right? Yeah. Okay,
Go immediately to King David and say to him, did not you, O Lord King, swear to your maidservant, your son Solomon shall succeed me as king, and he shall sit upon my throne? Then why has Adoniah become king?
did David ever say that? Do we have any evidence that David ever
No.
said that to Bathsheba?
No.
No,
And he didn't become king yet. I mean, he's just making a play for it.
right, but like that he's doing all the things that Amnon did, right? But and then that Avshalom did.
Yeah,
But
they can,
David is telling Bathsheba to go lie to this old man, right?
because he's old, he said, oh, maybe I forgot that I said
Maybe I
that.
forgot.
Oops.
Okay.
While you are still there talking with the king, I will come out and after you and confirm your words.
Me, the prophet, I have the hotline to God. I know you're speaking the truth, right?
And I heard it too.
And I heard it too. Yeah.
So Bathsheba went to the king in his chamber. The king was very old, and Abishag the Shunammite was waiting on the king. Bathsheba bowed low in homage to the king, and the king asked, "What troubles you? She answered him, My lord, you yourself swore to your maidservant by the Lord your God, your son Solomon shall succeed me as king, and he shall sit upon my throne. Yet now Adoniah has become king, and you, my lord the king, know nothing about it. He has prepared a sacrificial feast of a great many oxen, fatlings, and sheep, and he has invited all the king's son, and Abiathar the priest, and Joab, commander of the army. He has not invited your servant Solomon. And so the eyes of all Israel are upon you, O Lord King, to tell them who shall succeed my lord, the king on the throne. Otherwise, when my lord the king lies down with his fathers, my son Solomon and I will be regarded as traitors. She was still talking to the king when the prophet Nathan arrived. They announced to the king, the prophet Nathan is here, and he entered the king's presence. Bowing low to the king with his face to the ground, Nathan said, O Lord King, you must have said, Adoniah shall succeed me as king, and he shall sit upon my throne. For he has gone down today and prepared a sacrificial feast of a great many oxen, fatlings, and sheep. He invited all the king's son and the officers and Abiathar the priest. At this very moment, they're eating and drinking with him, and they're shouting, Long live King Adoniah. But he did not invite me, your servant, or the priest Zadok, or Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, or your servant Solomon. Can this decision have come from my lord the king without you telling your servant who is to succeed the throne of my lord the king?
Stop.
He's been belted.
He's in Bel, Nathan in Belton.
Yeah, right, we don't have any record before that there was any declaration,
That Solomon will be king.
right,
Yeah.
or the other,
Or that,
that the party,
yeah, we don't know
that
that.
they're yelling.
Yeah, right,
"Long
right,
live
right.
the king."
You can presume that might be happening, but yeah. And,
They're playing on David's, possibly loss of memory or at least age related.
but they're also playing on David's vanity that he wants to be the one to declare someone king,
Right.
not the person themselves, right?
Somebody
So
else.
even if Adoniah would be a decent king. I mean, Nathan thinks that Solomon will be better, or at least protect him, maybe, right? That he needs to get David to say, wait a minute, that's right, I'm the one who declares the next king, right?
It's an observation. I think this is the first time that God is not involved.
Ah, yeah, well, I mean, we find throughout Samuel, God kind of comes and goes, but here, yes, God's not, you're right,
But I mean, the
declaring a king,
selection of whether it's the king or the next leader of Israel,
right,
you know, even Joseph at least has dreams.
right, so we don't have, with the judges, God picks the judges. And then with the king, God picked Saul, didn't work out, God picked David. And now we have a political process, right? Yeah. Okay. Good. I mean, sorry, someone online is about to say something? I heard, no, okay. Good, so someone else pick up where we had 28, David's response.
King David's response was, summon Bathsheba. She entered the king's presence and stood before the king. And the king took an oath, saying, as the Lord lives, who has rescued me from every trouble? The oath I swore to you by the Lord, the God of Israel, that your son Solomon should succeed me as king, and that he should sit upon my throne in my stead. I will fulfill this very day.
This oath that might have happened or not have happened, but now it's happening, right?
There's David's reference to God.
Right,
But
Bathsheba bowed low in homage to the king, and her face to the ground, and she said, with her face to the ground, and she said, may my lord King David live forever. Then King David said, summon to me the priest Zadok, the prophet Nathan, and Benaiah, son of Jehoiada.
Jehoiada.
When they came before the king said to them, take my loyal soldiers and have my son Solomon ride on my mule and bring him down to Gihon. Let the priest Zadok and the prophet Nathan anoint him there king over Israel, whereupon we shall sound the horn and shout, Long live King Solomon. Then march up after him, and let him come in and sit on my throne, for he shall succeed me as king. Him I designate to be ruler of Israel and Judah. Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, spoke up and said to the king, Amen, and may the Lord, the God of my lord the king, so ordain. As the Lord was with my lord the king, so may he be with Solomon, and may he exalt his throne even higher than the throne of my lord King David. Then the priest Zadok and the prophet Nathan and Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, went down to the Serathites and the Pelethites. They had Solomon ride on King David's mule, and they led him to Gihon. The priest Zadok took the horn of oil from the tent and anointed Solomon. They sounded the horn, and all the people shouted, Long live King Solomon. All the people then marched up behind him, playing on flutes and making merry till the earth was split open by the uproar.
And like I heard it in Taylor Swift's concert in Seattle, all the girls were jumping around so much that you felt it in the earthquake detection stations. And the earth split open. Yeah.
Adoniah and all the guests who were with him, who had just finished eating, heard it. When Joab heard the sound of the horn, he said, Why is the city in such an uproar? He was still speaking when the priest Jonathan, son of Abiathar, arrived. Come in, said Adoniah. You are a worthy man, and you surely bring good news. But Jonathan replied, I didn't know, yeah. Alas, my lord King David has made Solomon king. The king sent with him the priest Zadok and the prophet Nathan and Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, and the Serathites and Pelethites. He had him ride on the king's mule, and the priest Zadok and the prophet Nathan anointed him king at Gihon. Then they came up from there making merry, and the city went into an uproar. That's the noise you heard. Further, Solomon seated himself on the royal throne. Further, the king's courtiers came to congratulate our Lord King David, saying, May God make the renown of Solomon even greater than yours, and may he exalt his throne even higher than yours. And the king bowed low on his couch. And further, this is what the king said. Praise be the Lord, the God of Israel, who has this day provided a successor to my throne, while my own eyes can see it.
Stop.
Power,
What's that?
power,
Right.
yeah.
Okay, so how do you think, how should Adonia feel right now?
I got a problem.
Yeah,
Very secondary.
right, but also he's now in rebellion against his dad. Right.
I'm at risk.
Yeah,
But I think the last four words say, or the last sentence, while my own eyes can see it.
yeah,
And the other, Anonia went behind his back.
went behind his back, right, yeah. Although so did Nathan and Bathsheba. Nathan and Bathsheba did too, but then brought it in front of him, right, yeah. But
And again, the power of a
Adonia,
woman,
what's that?
the power of a woman.
Right, yes, but yeah, and we haven't seen Bathsheba since Solomon was born, right? We've never heard anything from Bathsheba until now too, right? And here she comes at the end, but Adonia, right, he just assumed he would be king and didn't even consult with his dad, right? Yeah. That's, I guess also David doesn't like that too, right?
And they said, his father said nothing to stop them. either.
Right, he didn't know, yeah. Okay, so what's gonna happen to the party? Someone else pick up verse 49.
Thereupon all of Adonia's guests rose in alarm, and each went his own way.
Wow.
Adonia, in fear of Solomon, went at once to the tent and grasped the horns of the altar.
That's the tent. The tent is,
The ark.
yeah, where the sanctuary, right, before the temple was built. This is the Ohel, the Mishkan, right, where the Ark of the Covenant is, okay. He grasps it, so here, like, picture this, he's holding on to the ark, what does he think? What?
Sanctuary.
Sanctuary, that's where the word sanctuary comes from, right? That you know, if you go into the church or whatever, you can't be killed. That comes, you know, this is where it is. Yeah. And it happened also, I think, in different Greek stories too, like people would go into the gods' temples for safety and stuff.
It was reported to Solomon. Adoniah is in the fear of King Solomon and has grasped the horns of the altar, saying, let King Solomon first swear to me that he will not put his servant to the sword. Solomon said, if he behaves worthily, not a hair of his head shall fall to the ground. But if he is caught in any offense, he shall die. So King Solomon sent and had him taken down from the altar. He came and bowed before King Solomon, and Solomon said to him, go home.
Where, and this has happened already, right?
Election,
David said that with King Saul's descendants, right? Yeah,
case of election denial.
I guess,
Right.
but now
But
he's,
stood down, right.
he stood down. Okay. All right. Comments, questions? Right, chapter 2. Now, here, you wanna read? Okay.
Okay. When David's life was drawing to a close, he instructed his son Solomon as follows. I am going the way of all the earth. Be strong and show yourself a man. Keep the charge of the Lord your God, walking in his ways and following his laws, his commandments, his rules, and his admonitions as recorded in the teaching of Moses, in order that you may succeed him in whatever you undertake and wherever you turn.
So now I think this verse may like appear to like a modern scholar that this is why it comes later from, who knows, the prophet Jeremiah, but the schools of the prophets later put this book together. Because it's about, what's it about?
The future.
Well, right, but it's about,
It's almost like Deuteronomy.
yeah, it sounds like Deuteronomy, but it's about walking
Behave.
God, laws and commandments. Mentioning Moses, we never hear about Moses in the book of Samuel, right? Things like that, right? So yes, it's like the book of Deuteronomy, which when we'll see toward the end of the books of Kings, we'll see the book of Deuteronomy specifically, right? That give you, a preview of months ahead.
Then the Lord will fulfill the promise that he made concerning me. If your descendants are scrupulous in their conduct and walk before me faithfully with all their heart and soul, your line on the throne of Israel shall never end.
So the phrase like that, heart and soul, or, b'chol levavam u'b'chol nafsham, right? Sounds like the
Yeah.
Shema, which is from the book of Deuteronomy. So here, we're having language from the book of Deuteronomy, right? So when you read the Bible, you have to know this book is commenting on this book too. That's why you have to know all of it.
But this is the part that I have the most trouble with all of it.
What's that?
That if your descendants are scrupulous in their conduct.
Yeah,
So in other
following
words,
the Torah.
right, one foul up and there's a plague.
No,
No.
because, well, that it's a little bit different.
You control and you
No,
don't.
it's not about control because there is repentance.
They're setting a high standard.
It's a standard, right? It's repentance and it's hyperbolic language, right? But it's also, let's talk about this. When a nation has bad leaders, what happens to the nation? Well, bad things happen in society. So it's talking about society too, not just personal conduct. I think the book of Deuteronomy, we read it as you do bad, you get punished, but it's more like you all do bad, you all, punishment comes, right? And so, but we'll see in the book of Kings, all the bad leaders bring calamity upon the people, right?
Has Benjamin Netanyahu read this book?
Yeah, well, so the book of Deuteronomy says the king is supposed to read the book over and over again, right? But yeah, I mean, yes. The book of Samuel, book of Kings, these used to be very much part of the Israeli curriculum, yes. But it's true. I mean, this was not a democratic system here, but it was in a sense, I mean, within the book of Deuteronomy here, verses here, the king is subject to the laws too. The king is not above the laws, the king does not make the laws. Who makes the laws?
God does.
God makes the laws, right? And so that's part of the political system.
This is the reminder.
Yeah.
Just like,
Yeah.
keep your act together.
Right, yeah.
And your descendants.
Because you're ruling you're ruling on behalf of God, you are not God, right?
So that's what Eric calls a theocracy.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. There you go, last week. So, Ken online is saying rarely do leaders think they are the bad ones. That-
And this
right.
predates democracy.
Right, yeah, so last week, I know it was hard, but I had the discussion, Martin Buber, who wrote about the biblical theocracy. The theocracy meant that God was actually the king, right? And not, theocracy didn't mean rule by, in the biblical context, it didn't mean like, the clerics rule. There was a system of checks and balances in a sense between the king and the priests and then there were the prophets, right? But God was the ultimate lawgiver, right? Not the king. And that's meant that God was the ruler, okay? But we all have to live. The king is a citizen like anybody else who has to live in the same way, right? I think that's what it's saying. Okay, keep going.
Further, you know what Joab, son of Zeruiah, did to me, what he did in the two commanders of Israel's forces, Abner, son of Ner, and Amasa, son of Jether. He killed them, shedding blood of war in peacetime, staining the girdle of his loins and the sandals on his feet with blood of war.
So. What's David telling Solomon? Remember, Joab has been my loyal, my cousin, my loyal general for a long time. What did he do way back when?
And this is the Godfather.
This is
Yeah.
where that scene of the Godfather definitely comes from. Remember Joab, remember how he killed Abner, even though we were at peace, Abner, who was Shaul's general. Remember how he killed Amasa, who was Absalom's general, remember? I didn't tell him to do those things. Just remember that. He's planting a seed for Solomon. What's he telling Solomon to do?
Watch your back,
Yeah.
Watch your back,
watch your friends.
or maybe even get rid of Joab.
Mm.
I don't know. Well, I do know, but we'll see, right? But yes, what did Don Corleone say on his deathbed, right?
Keep your friends close and your enemies closer.
Yeah, well, okay.
It's the only thing-
And Joab didn't support Shlomo here,
Right.
right? He supported Adonias. Keep going.
So act in accordance with your wisdom and see that his white hair does not go down to Sheol in peace.
Ah. So now he's being more specific. But go down to Sheol. Sheol's the underworld, right? But in peace means you die old age, you die a natural death, right?
But deal graciously with the sons of Barzillai and the Gilead, for they befriended me when I fled from your brother Absalom. Let them be among those that eat at your table. You must also deal with Shimei, son of Gera, the Benjaminite from Bahurim. He insulted me outrageously when I was on my way to Mahanaim, but he came down to meet me at the Jordan, and I swore to him by the Lord, I will not put you to this sword.
Right, what's the important word? I will not put you to the sword. Someone else may, I will not, right? Remember, he was the one that was cursing David when he was going in exile from his son Absalom, right? Okay.
So do not let him go unpunished, for you are a wise man, and you will know how to deal with him, and send his gray hair down to Sheol in blood.
Jeez.
So David slept with his fathers, and he was buried in the city of David.
That's it. That's the death.
The end of the-
That, right? Sleep with your ancestors, sleep with your fathers. That is, that's euphemism for death, but it's also the phrase for a good king, right? When they die. Because you didn't die in battle, you didn't get torn up by animals, you didn't get put on a stake and taken by your enemies, right? Things like that. You died and they buried you in your family tomb, right?
So at
Or
the
he
end,
created the family tomb here, right? Yeah.
so
Buried
at
in
the end, he
city.
just recalled all the bad people who acted against him and all the good people who acted for him and
That's how you should
It was
read
a
peaceful
guide.
ending.
It was like a guide for Solomon.
Yeah, right, right.
Giving-
You-
After this,
Or Solomon.
Settling all the scores,
What's that?
yeah.
settling all the scores.
Settling all the
Yeah.
scores,
Or
right?
Solomon said he said that, so he just, I mean.
Summary,
Right.
the Godfather.
Yeah. Yes, okay, but anyways, just, he died, and we move on, right? We move on. You could go today to David's tomb, I mean. I don't know when it was first declared to be David's tomb, but it's outside the old city, just outside the old city. On what the Crusaders called Mount Zion, even though Mount Zion was where the temple was, also called Mount Moriah, there's this hill that's probably outside the old city. There's this place called David's tomb, right? Also, some Christians say that this was the upper house where the Last Supper was, right? I'm sure there was a mosque there at one point too, right? So you could go to David's tomb.
There's a foreshadowing of Solomon's wisdom
Mhm.
in this speech that David gives.
Keeps telling him about being wise, right? Which is also language from Deuteronomy about the people are going to be wise when they follow the ways of God, right? Yeah, and so, Solomon, we'll see about his wisdom, also see about his faults. But, tradition then says he writes these books of wisdom, Mishle, which we call Proverbs, and Kohelet, which is called Ecclesiastes. I don't know what that word means, Ecclesiastes, but like the Kohelet, and Shir Shirim, the Song of Songs, right? But yes, we'll see about Solomon's wisdom. But before this, we didn't know anything about Solomon, right? So Shlomo, except that he was Bathsheba's son after the first baby died, right? The baby that happened because of the affair, right? And and I'll say one thing, Solomon's name, Shlomo in Hebrew, why does it have an N at the end in English, right? Why did it become Solomon, right? Because in Greek, when the Bible was translated into Greek in the Septuagint, male names in Greek don't end in vowels, so they would add some consonants to the end. So like even, we say, like a Greek Plato, we say in English, but in Greek it was Platon, Aplaton, with a new at the end, the Greek word, right? So they added consonants. So that's where you get like, Jesus in Greek, you come from a Hebrew name, Yehoshua, ends in a vowel sound, right? And then it became, Jesus or I don't know how to say the name in Greek or in Latin, right? So that's how it's not.
Groucho and Harpo and Zeppo.
Right, so Christianity says ecclesia means assembly, yeah, thank you. What's that?
That's where you get Groucho and Harpo.
Right, exactly. But Shlomo means his peace, right, like from Shalom. And I guess sometimes when they translated the Bible back or into English, they kept some of the names sounded more Hebrew and some of the names sounded more Grecicized, right? But Solomon, Shlomo, right?
This is unusual that the father would be able to choose his next successor, plus give him the whole game plan.
Right,
and
right.
give- I mean, like
Well,
in
it's-
families, you
It's,
know,
it's definitely unusual in the Book of Kings because a lot of the kings die in battle or die from
right.
being
that's-
punished or things like that, yes. So we have here yeah,
Actually
so
write it
it's
out,
like what we're gonna read in 2 weeks. Jacob giving a farewell to all his sons, right? And this is this you read as the Haftarah for that, I think, right? And so,
What's also unusual is that you have the king appoint a king.
Yes.
While he's still living.
always,
Right, that's what I mean.
right, which would be a better system,
Yes, I mean, but he's made his son the reigning monarch.
right?
While he's still alive.
Right, and so it became a problem in some European history when the king only had one wife, so therefore you couldn't have a bunch of sons. Because a bunch of them would die from, inbred genetic diseases, and then you would have a crisis when you didn't have a son or something like that, right? So, but and then in some European countries, they then created laws about who became king based on birth order and things like that. That's what happens in England, right? That there's a law of succession, right? And here we don't have that yet, right? And the Bible over and over again, like Book of Genesis, subverts the firstborn all the time, right? So, yeah.
That's what just going back to verse 48, that's what I was thinking that meant when he said, Praise be the Lord God of Israel, who has this day provided a successor to my throne while my own eyes can see it.
Yeah, yeah.
Rather than not being secretive.
Right, yeah, it's where we have a process here. Yeah,
But plus in giving values to Solomon.
yeah, yeah.
Like,
Give 'em
like.
what values of wisdom,
utilities,
God's
the
ways.
Products,
Yeah.
you know, like, do a video so that your family can get. the-
Oh, right.
Right, you know.
Yeah, he's,
so, like,
he's giving his,
like-
his ethical will,
Right.
right, yeah, kind of, and his enemy list. But yes, right, he's giving an ethical will here for Solomon. Yeah, okay. Well, there's something said on mine. It's not Grecicides, it's Gracicides. Okay, thank you. All right, so, verse, where are we at? Verse 11, chapter 2, someone else pick up.
Okay.
Yeah.
The length of David's reign over Israel was 40 years. He reigned 7 years in Hebron, and he reigned 33 years in Jerusalem. And Solomon sat upon the throne of his father David, and his rule was firmly established. Adonijah, son of Haggith, came to see Bathsheba, Solomon's mother. She said, "Do you come with friendly intent?" "Yes," he replied. And he continued, "I would like to have a word with you." "Speak up," she said. Then he said, "You know that the kingship was rightly mine, and that all Israel wanted me to reign. But the kingship passed on to my brother. It came to him by the will of the Lord. And now I have one request to make of you. Do not refuse me." She said, "Speak up." He replied, "Please ask King Solomon, for he won't refuse you, to give me Abishag, the Shunammite, as wife." "Very well," said Bathsheba. "I will speak to the king in your behalf."
What does he want?
The concubine, the young girl.
The young, right, as a wife, right?
Yes.
Okay,
Bathsheba went to King Solomon to speak to him about Adonijah. The king rose to greet her and bowed down to her. He sat on his throne, and he had a throne placed for the queen mother, and she sat on his right. She said, "I have one small request to make of you. Do not refuse me." He responded, "Yes, mother, I shall not refuse you."
I have to point one thing out in the Hebrew, though. There's no queen, it's not queen mother, it's the mother of the king, right? There's no queen, there is no queen in Israel. This is gonna come up later in the books, right? The mother of the king, right, is her title. You know, we don't know Solomon's wife, but there's one thing, there is no queen. Or king consort or things like that, right? And especially because they have many wives, but yes.
Then she said, "Let Abishag the Shunammite be given to your brother Adonijah as wife." The king replied to his mother, "Why request Abishag the Shunammite for Adonijah? Request the kingship for him, for he is my oldest brother, and the priest Abiathar and Joab the son of Zeruiah are on his side."
All right, so what is Solomon thinking? What's this wisdom of Solomon? What is he thinking?
That if his brother consorts with his father's consort, that strikes a very strong bond.
Yeah, right. And he still has supporters in court, right? They could say, you know, yeah,
Why not ask for my position as
Yeah.
king? Yeah.
he's telling his mom, you're getting played here, right? Okay.
And do you think he's getting, but? I mean,
Yes,
I don't know, it could just
There's
be,
enough ambiguity in it.
it could just be Adoniah is just
He
a
wants
vain
to-
person who wants a young bride, right? Yeah.
Why not?
But why that, way, right? He could have anybody who want, like, yes, I know, I'm telling you, you know, misogynistic here, but it is.
well, he is
But
one of the
he-
most eligible bachelors in
Yes.
He's,
Jerusalem.
well, yeah, he's very, yeah, I don't know. But why that one, right? Yeah, why that one?
One,
Yeah,
okay.
that's what Solomon's thinking.
Thereupon King Solomon swore by the Lord, saying, "So may God do to me and even more, if broaching this matter does not cost Adonijah his life. Now, as the Lord lives, who has established me and set me on the throne of my father David, and who has provided him with a house as he promised. Adonijah shall be put to death this very day." And Solomon instructed Benaiah, son of
Yehoiada,
who struck Adonijah down, and so he died.
Oh, dear.
right? So now Beniyahu becomes Solomon's Yoav, right? He's the guy that does the dirty work. Yeah.
He just saw that as a total, like, I
Luca.
wanna take over.
Oh, don't want to take any chances too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
wow.
Luca Brasi.
Okay.
To the priest Abiathar, the king said, "Go to your estate at Anathoth. You deserve to die, but I shall not put you to death at this time, because you carried the ark of my Lord God before my father David, and because you shared all the hardships that my father endured."
So what does he do? He's kicking him out of the court, but not killing him, but house arrest. Right?
Wait a minute, who is Anathon?
Abiathar is David's like friend, the priest that supported him when he was on the lam from Saul, right?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if there's also the fact that he's a priest.
Right, he doesn't want to kill him because he's a priest. Well, he says, yeah, because you're the one who carried the ark, and yeah, it could be. He doesn't want to kill priests like Shaul did, like King Saul killed priests, right? Yeah.
So going back for a minute, at the end of the first section, Adoniah is the one who went into the altar and said, you
Yeah.
know, don't kill me.
Right.
And this-
Today.
Yeah, but Solomon
he
said, I'm
wasn't
not gonna
there.
kill you unless you slip up.
Yeah.
Right,
and
slipped
then
up.
Here's the slip up.
He's viewing this as a, yeah,
Yeah.
whether it is or not.
So Solomon dismissed Abiathar from his office of priest of the Lord, thus fulfilling what the Lord had spoken at Shiloh regarding the house of Eli.
What is it? What's this? The house of Eli, who is Eli or Eli? Who is he? He was priest at the beginning of the book of
Saul.
Sam, right? But his curse was his sons will, there'll be a downfall of his son. So I guess Abiathar was a descendant of Eli, right? Okay, so someone else pick up here, because now it gets exciting. Anybody, verse 28?
When the news reached Joab, he fled to the tent of the Lord and he grasped the horns of the altar. For Joab had sided with Adoniah, though he had not sided with Absalom.
Right.
King-
Oh, Joab's, right, we've always known that Joab is smart and is able to read the politics, even though he slipped up here with Adoniah. Well, what does he do? He runs.
He runs for the horn.
Yeah.
Same thing.
King Solomon was told that Joab had fled to the tent of the Lord and that he was there by the altar. So Solomon sent Benaiah, son of Yehudiah,
Yehoiada.
saying, "Go and strike him down." And Benaiah went to the tent of the Lord and said to him, "Thus says the king, come out." "No," he replied, "I will die here." And Benaiah reported back to the king that Joab had answered thus and thus. And the king said, "Do just as he said, strike him down and bury him and remove guilt from me and my father's house for the blood of the innocent that Joab has shed. Thus the Lord will bring his blood guilt down upon his own head, because unbeknownst to my father, he struck down with the sword 2 men more righteous and honorable than he, Abner, son of Ner, the army commander of Israel, and Amasa, son of Jephthah, the army commander of Judah. May the guilt for their blood come down on the head of Joab and his descendants forever. And may good fortune from the Lord be granted forever to David and his descendants, his house and his throne." So Benaiah, son of Yehudiah, went up and struck him down, and then he was buried at his home in the wilderness. In his place, the king appointed Benaiah, son of Yehudiah, over the army, and in place of Abiathar, the king appointed the priest Zadok.
Okay, so I'm not sure he was buried in his home in the wilderness. I'm not sure if this is a euphemism mean that he was just thrown into the wilderness or he had some kind of country estate there and was buried there. I'm not sure. But the sanctuary didn't save him, right?
Wow.
Yeah, okay,
And his past bad deeds were
yeah, came back,
what he was told to do.
right, and then we appoint Sadok as priest too, right? Now, there's a problem here with separation of powers. Does the king get to appoint the priests? Or the priest, right? They have that here, which definitely comes up in the Hanukkah story, where the priestly family, you know, the Hasmoneans become the priests, and then they start appointing themselves kings too, right? And, but also we have this guy Sadok, that's where a lot of historians think where the Sadukim come from, the descendants of Sadok, or, you know, as it says, you know, we learn from the New Testament, the Sadducees, right? You may have heard that from history class, right? Okay. But Sadok is now the head of the priests, and his kids will become the priests, right? The high priest. Okay, good. Keep the, let's see who else we have to kill.
Then the king, you want me to keep
Yeah,
reading?
okay, keep them.
Then the king summoned Shimei and said to him, build yourself a house in Jerusalem and stay there, but do not ever go out from there anywhere else. On this day that you go out and cross the Wadi Kidron, you can be sure that you will die. Your blood shall be on your own head. That's fair, said Shimei to the king. Your servant will do just as my lord the king has spoken. And for a long time, Shimei remained in Jerusalem. 3 years later, 2 slaves of Shimei ran away to King Ashish, son of Maacah of Gath. And Shimei was told, your slaves are in Gath. Shimei therefore saddled up his ass and went to Ashish in Gath to claim his slaves. And Shimei returned from Gath with his slaves. Solomon was told that Shimei had gone from Jerusalem to Gath and back. And the king summoned Shimei and said to him, did I not adjure you by the Lord and warn you on the very day that you leave and go anywhere else, you can be sure that you will die? And did you not say to me, it is fair, I accept? Why did you not abide by the oath before the Lord and by the orders which I gave you? The king said further to Shimei, you know, all the wrong which you remember very well that you did to my father David, well, now the Lord brings down your wrongdoing on your own head. But King Solomon shall be blessed, and the throne of David shall be established before the Lord forever. The king gave orders to Benai, son of, I've got to learn how to say it. Jehoiada, and he went out and struck Shimei down, so he died. Thus the kingdom was secured in Solomon's hands.
Well, that's a whole view of Solomon I had no idea about.
All right, yeah.
He's
Stuff.
Settled scores.
He sounds good, he's wise, right? Wisdom has to do with politics too, right? It says here. So, but
But he didn't go east.
right,
I mean, he went west.
right,
Yeah,
got right is what a Philistine town.
although, I mean, you can read what Solomon said to him.
Yeah, it said if
And
you go.
Solomon could say, yeah, but I didn't say, I wouldn't kill you if you go west,
Right,
so I can still kill you.
right, yes,
But it could also be read, you know, or in his thinking,
yeah,
Shemaiah's thinking that, well, as long as I don't go east, I'm okay.
right, yes, yes. Yeah. And then let's think about what he's also like, what is he doing? He's going to
Fetch back his servants.
fetch back his slaves, right? Which you could say, well, you know, well, first of all, what the Torah, there's no fugitive slave law. If your slaves escape,
They're free.
they're free, right? And so that could be part of it here too. Well, if your slaves escape, you're the person who shelters them cannot give them back, right? Too. And so that could be part of it too. It's like Shimei is like you know, such a evil person that he wants to re-enslave people too, and you know that could be part of it.
Bit much for the death penalty.
Well,
Well,
yeah,
But I was kind of reading it like, build yourself a house and stay there. In
Mhm.
other words, you're a prisoner in a gilded cage.
yeah,
And so I don't know how egregious the departure was.
yeah.
But sounded like,
He needed an excuse. Solomon needed an excuse to kill him too. Yeah, right. And I mean, David did that with people too, right? I mean, it happens today in monarchies. You know, the crown prince of Saudi Arabia locked up all of his brothers and cousins in the Ritz. Was it the Ritz or some fancy hotel, right? You know, it sounds nice, but you know, they wanted to leave too.
Happens in the United States too, and there's a
Well-
new administration, they clean out the old.
Right,
cabinet.
okay, so good. So what makes a democratic transition different?
Well, normally they don't kill.
You
them.
don't kill the,
Right.
you don't kill a
But
process.
supposedly there's an election that's
Yeah.
fair and, you
It's a
know,
peaceful transition. You don't kill the people, right? And people agree to leave, right? That's part of it. Until, you know, a couple years ago, right? No, I'm being totally serious. That's why it was an anomaly in America. That the agreement is you lose, you leave, right?
yeah.
And then remember when George Bush fired all the prosecutors, right? That was okay under the American system, that just people felt it was like egregious that it just like happened like that, right? But like.
Same thing.
Yeah, right,
Well,
So-
when Nixon fired the prosecutor.
right, but Nixon fired the prosecutor for a corrupt reason, that was his own prosecutor too, to not be prosecuted himself. But like, when Bush, if I remember, Bush just fired the not the political not the ones that were appointed politically, the career prosecutors, he fired a bunch of them, right? Wasn't that it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Which was
But-
unusual. It's not
which was
like-
unusual, it wasn't like he couldn't, but
You know.
it was unusual,
Sounds like-
but like in a democratic system or a functioning democratic system. The new administration comes in and the other people leave, right? They don't have, I mean, the administration can keep them on, but here, it's violent, right?
Well, it might be violent here too.
It could, yeah, it could get to that, and that's,
We've
that-
seen violence.
right, and that's why our system is based on norms that may not be working anymore, right? Yeah.
Right,
Just gonna say that it seems like Shemay didn't know,
Yeah.
and they're not giving details like, oh, he was afraid, so was he really thinking he did something that terrible? Did he go, he's called, he goes.
Right, and that's why I'm thinking like the thing about following his slaves might be something about his character, right, too, that he thought he like. Who cares what Solomon thinks or something like that, I'm not sure. You know,
Or it wasn't that big a deal, he wasn't going like in
Yeah.
the direction that which he threatens,
right,
threaten them.
yeah,
But it's striking that there's no indication that he was afraid
yeah, right,
of being called. before he did.
yeah,
but this is building the case that Solomon just, you know, good.
Yeah.
Better Listen to my word.
Yeah.
because he
yeah,
isn't.
And I mean, he's also, Shimei is also a guy who goes both ways, right, as far as politics stuff,
yeah, right.
right? He curses.
He curses
curses
David,
the
then,
king, and then he
Suck
turns
back.
around and
Yeah.
throws his arms around the king.
yeah, right,
So this is a guy that, at the minimum,
Yeah,
watch,
trust.
Same thing.
keep him in his house and watch. And if he gets out of his house,
yeah,
you're better off getting rid of him.
right.
Lindsey Graham.
It's, you know, like we can always, yeah, okay, but yeah, and, right.
So we-
Good, so now, after a couple of years, Solomon has solidified his power, it seems like, right? So now, here we have the story of Solomon. We end with the story of David, those were all of David's troubles,
Hmm.
and now we have Solomon. Should we read a few verses? Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, so someone else pick up chapter 3.
Solomon aligned himself by marriage with Pharaoh, king of Egypt. He married Pharaoh's daughter and brought her to the city of David to live there until he had finished building his palace and the house of the Lord and the walls around Jerusalem. The people, however, continued to offer sacrifices at the open shrines because up to that time, no house had been built for the name of the Lord. And Solomon, though he loved the Lord and followed the practices of his father David, also sacrificed and offered it at the shrine.
All right, so here is foreshadowing for a lot to come for the rest of the books of Kings. What are we learning? So Solomon married Pharaoh's daughter. Let's argue. What's a positive about this?
Political line, that he keeps peace.
Keep peace. Egypt could be a much more powerful place to be tied with Egypt. Great. Okay,
Who brings a lot of wealth in.
can bring in a lot of wealth. Yes,
Control
very
the
nice.
money
Good.
and the land.
All right, good. it secures the southern border because we have an alliance, right?
Opens up trade routes.
Opens up trade routes. Good, very nice things.
Wow.
Good. What's bad about this?
Foreign gods.
Foreign gods. Now, it has not said foreign gods yet. Solomon is centralizing worship of, you know, the God of Israel. But there are all of these altars everywhere. It doesn't say that they're two foreign gods, but it's hinting that that could start happening, right? You bring in people with strong religious backgrounds of other gods, and it can lead to disaster. What else, though, can lead to disaster? The Book of Kings will tell us.
Decentralized control.
Well,
Religion.
actually, the alliances could lead to disaster. When you make alliances with big empires, even though Egypt at the time was on a decline, but if you make alliances with big empires, what happens?
They might.
They take you over.
Yeah.
Machiavelli talks about, you know, trying to avoid alliances at all costs because, and especially with somebody that's got more of an Italian state making an alliance with Spanish king. is a
Yeah.
Problem.
Yeah,
Spanish
right.
king is.
Right,
Hmm.
and yet, at the same time, Israel is a small state, you know, like one of the Italian states at the time of Machiavelli. Israel is small and can be powerless. So you're tempted to make alliances with power, and
They might.
it can help you, and yet it can backfire, right?
Get taken
Who did the seating chart at the wedding?
Yeah,
Yeah,
That could be today.
yeah,
Do they have
Ukraine
Hanukkah or
joining NATO.
Christmas?
Ukraine joining NATO, yeah,
Israel and the United States.
Israel and the, right, there's a lot of good things that Israel gets from the United States, and yet a lot of like. A lot, you know. Right, a lot of pressures from the United, but the whole Cold War system too. was that, right?
Syria and Russia.
Yeah, right, right, yeah, for sure, yeah. There's the whole Cold War system, and maybe where the world is creating a new system like that right now, right? And so,
Do the Machatanim get along?
yeah, we'll see. But like pharaohs and like, we see the word pharaoh there and we're supposed to go pharaoh,
Yeah,
right?
really.
Yeah, shock.
Yeah, right,
But the religious part here with the shrine, the people, it says the people continue to have the sacrifice.
right,
So
but
they
it seems that they're
just,
sacrificing to the God of Israel in their local shrines, because there's no centralized shrine yet. But, you know, it's hinting that that might not always be the case.
Our last dealings with Pharaoh were not so great.
No.
Well, we know what happens, right?
Exactly.
You forget the
As if we're-
past.
Yeah.
They have to escape from Pharaoh.
Right, and
But
yet,
the Titanic, you know the ship's gonna sink.
right, yeah, and yet Israel, like, international politics have to happen too, right?
You can't ignore your southern border. It's a strong, you know, it's a powerful pull.
Right? So let's talk, should the US have an alliance with Saudi Arabia? Right?
What about?
It's an autocratic system, like there's a pharaoh in Saudi Arabia today, right? Let's say. I mean, Israel or America is the strong partner, but are they, right? It's international politics are, you know, it's always risky, right?
What about
That was
Israeli
Market
and
Standard Oil
Palestinian?
back in the day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so sure. So America has the whole system based on the alliances sometimes come through corporations, right? I mean, that was the British Empire in India too. It started with a corporation, not with like the king, right?
Well, it started with oil, but now it's a buttress against Iran. That's
Yeah,
why.
right.
that's
All
why
the
we're allowed-
positive in that,
allowed
right?
Saudi, right?
So international politics where this is gonna be a theme of the book too, right? So David was like the international politics where small chieftains around. Now we're talking real power players, right? Okay? Think about it, like. Eventually that might turn into the downfall of the kingdom, you know, hundreds of years later. The Book of Kings is about a 400-year period, 300 or 400-year period, right? The timeline will get a little confusing when we go along, because we'll have the kings of Israel and the kings of Judah, right? Two different kingdoms, and they overlap, the kingships overlap, so we'll get a little confused. Don't worry, it will be okay. But this book is gonna last, you know, hundreds of years, okay?
Hopefully not our reading.
No, because some of the kings only, you know, we don't know a lot about it. But we have to now think about international relation. So first, we have internal politics of Solomon, right? The wisdom and walking in God's way is the path, right? Now we have international relations. That walking in God's way might also be the path, but what does that mean, right? Okay,
Compromise. And David advises them on both.
yeah,
He lays both
yeah.
down.
Yeah. But David was a small time king and now maybe Solomon's a bigger player, right? Yeah. Okay, let's stop there. We'll go back here, so put them in the chat. Let us. So wait, next, let me just say, next Shabbat is the, what's the dates?
22nd.
Next Shabbat is the 23rd. I will be out of town, right? I'll be back on the 30th, but do people want to be here? Let's take off the next 2 weeks, okay? And we'll come back on the 6th. Does that sound good? Okay. All right. So let us give thanks for the food that we ate. And let's sing the Birkat Hamazon. Shir Hamazon Teshuv Adonai Et Shivat Zion Hayinu Kechol Mimad Imalescho Bidnu Shonenu Rina Az Yomru Bagoim Higdil Adonai Lasot Imele Higdil Adonai Lasot Imanu Hayinu Semechim Shuv Adonai Et Shivitenu Kafikim Malek Hazorim Berima Berina Yitzolu Halok Yelechu Vachov Nose Meshech Hazara Boya Berina Nose Alumotav Haverim B'Chaverot Nevarech
יהי שם אדוני לברך מעתה ועד עולם.
יהי שם אדוני מבורך מעתה ועד עולם. ברשות החברה נברך אלוהינו שלחנו משלום יוסף ברוך אלוהינו שלחנו משלום.
וכתובו חיינו.
ברוך אלוהינו שלחנו משלום וכתובו חיינו. ברוך הוא ברוך שמו. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם. עזב את העולם כולו בטובו בחסד וברחמים. הוא נותן לחם לאכול בשר כי לעולם חסדו וטובו הגדול. תמיד לא חסר לנו ואל יחסר לנו מתון לעולם ועד בעבור שמו הגדול. כי הוא עזר ופרנס לכל ומיטיב לכל ומכין מזון לאכול בריאותיו אשר ברא. ברוך אתה אדוני עזר את הכל. ככתוב ויחדת ושבחת וברכת את אדוני אלוהיך הארץ הטובה אשר נתן לך. ברוך אתה אדוני על הארץ ועל המזון ובני ירושלים עיר הקודש במהרה בימינו. ברוך אתה אדוני בונה ברחמיו ירושלים אמן. הרחמן לא חלינו לעולם ועד. We say amen. הרחמן הוא יתברך בשמיים ובארץ.
אמן.
הרחמן הוא ישלח ברכה ברבה בבית הזה ועל שולחן זה שלחנו עליו הרחמן הוא ישלחנו את אליהו הנביא, הרחמן הוא ישלחנו את אליהו הנביא לכלתו, ויבשר לנו, ויבשר לנו, ויבשר לנו בשורות טובות, ישועות ונחמות. הרחמן הוא ינחילנו יום שכולו שבת, ומנוחה לחיי העולמים, אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, ויעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ועל כל יושבי תבל ואימרו אמן. אדוני עוז לעמו ייתן, אדוני יברך את עמו בשלום. Shabbat shalom. Have a good, have a good break. End of your, end of Gregorian year break, let's say.
Gregorian.
Shabbat shalom.